Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest Dr. Gaston Woodland. Dr. Woodland, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. Thank you for reaching out. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Man, it's a pleasure to have you here. But before we get into the conversation, Dr. Woodland empower youth through education and entrepreneurship, and he foster a culture of hopefulness and excellence in the classroom and beyond. But before we get into the conversation itself, I would like Dr. Woodland to share more about himself so we can get an understanding of who he is before we get into the conversation. The floor is yours. Please share more with the listeners.
Absolutely, man. I was born and raised in a little town called Decatur, Illinois. I lived in Decatur, Illinois for most of my life. In 1999, my mother, we moved to Kansas City, Missouri. And I lived in Kansas City, Missouri for 20 years of my life. And then the last 3 years, we've been in Houston, and specifically in a suburb outside of Houston called Humble, Texas. And so that's kind of my background and where I come from.
Okay, man, it's great. And I heard a lot about like Kansas City. I don't know if we'll get into that conversation because maybe that's where the inspiration came from to empower, especially our youth. But we'll see if we get into that part of the conversation. So I normally start off with this question: what is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
Yeah, I think the mindset that it takes to be or to have a positive impact is focus. There's a lot of things that's going on in the world that's very negative, that I would say is downright just evil in a sense. There's a lot of things that are distractions. To have a positive mindset, you have to be able to focus with all those distractions. And even being positive all the time, it has its ups and downs. There are times, I don't want to be positive. I don't want to take the high route all the time. But the level of focus I think a person must have mentally, it takes a lot of focus. So I think if anything, there's a lot of pieces I can say, but the one thing that really I believe to make a positive impact, you have to be focused on your convictions, on your mission, and not be deterred. Because I believe that it's easy to be deterred from the path of positivity or righteousness, if you want to call it. So being focused, I think, is the number one thing that the mindset to make a positive impact.
Man, and I really appreciate that perspective. And yes, I do support that perspective on making a positive impact, because if we're not able to focus on our own convictions, as you mentioned, and the vision and dreams that we have, we're not going to achieve the things we want. And there are so many distractions that's happening around us. But if you should say something to someone who hear that being focused is important and they're not able to focus, what would you suggest to that person when it comes to them really becoming more focused on what they're doing?
I think, when you're trying to make a positive impact, I think that if you're struggling with focus, sometimes we try to be positive because that's the right thing to do. But we are being positive with no purpose.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for you to get in tune with a passion. I think if you want to begin this positive impact, you need to find your passion. Like what's that burning thing that you do or that you care about? And then you build around that. And I think that would help you focus, because being positive just to be positive, it's like one can define that in many ways.
Correct.
But how you tailor that to you and yourself, you have to find a passion. Like what is that thing? And when you build around that, I think more focus comes by that, because when you're in your passion, I think you can produce more things naturally. Yeah. Being positive on a general sense, it's it's not, that's not strong enough just to be positive, man. But once you find that passion, I think that focus will come, because now you're passionate about something that you care about. And then I think you can produce more.
I really appreciate that, because I think that is important. Because if you're going to focus, it's easier to focus on doing something that you enjoy doing, because it doesn't matter what you do in life. If it's something you love or don't love, there will be challenges and there will be distractions. So I really appreciate that perspective and that reminder, and how important it is for us to operate within our passion, especially when we're thinking about making a positive impact. So I really appreciate that. And most of the conversation today will be around Black men and what we can do to make a difference, and also what we're actually doing currently to make a difference. So my next question to you is, what advice do you have for the men listening, and how they can play a role in creating positive change?
Yeah, I think, outside of the passion, I think it's important for you to be conscious. And what I mean by that is being conscious of your community and what's going on in it. And I think when you're looking to get involved, sometimes, like I said, outside of the passion, you can just literally see the problems that are in our communities. And I think I think it's very simple. It may sound simple more than the actual things that go behind somebody actually doing something. But I think just being conscious of what's going on in your community. So I'll give you an example, and I'll put myself in it, is that I used to be a community organizer back in Kansas City for an organization. And one of the organization's initiatives was the game of chess. So I was over that program. It was an after school program. And we partnered with an organization called Harvesters, and the Harvesters would provide us with, they call them back snacks, and it'll be snacks that kids will eat during chess. So I fast forward and say, I learned the game and I loved it so much, and I saw an immediate correlation between the emotional intelligence in the game of chess, because the game of chess, there's no emotion involved. It's all 100% cognition, strategy, thinking. So I noticed back in Kansas City, and you said this earlier about how this would come up, and it's coming up now, is that when I was in Kansas City, the murder rate is very high. And I looked at it and I analyzed the murder rates, and I saw a trend. And the number one motive for murder in the city was argument. And I looked at the city's data, and the number one motive was argument. And with that argument, what followed was the number one choice of weapon for murder in Kansas City was a firearm. Okay. So I looked at it very easy. When somebody gets into an argument, they can't handle it, somebody gets a gun and somebody is killed. Yeah. So I bring it back to the whole concept of chess. I saw that and I saw the correlation, and I said, hey, well, let me use this game to get into the community and start a chess program. So what I did was, with the local church that I was at in Kansas City, I started a free chess program. So with that program, we would meet on Sundays before the service, and I had a bunch of kids there. So outside of that, I would start doing programs for young men to deal with emotional intelligence. So I say all that to say is that was something that I saw, a skill that I picked up, and I did something about it. So if men are watching this and you're asking yourself, what can I do? Well, it's something simple as that. I mean, that can be a track program, that can be a basketball program, that can be whatever program you want. I didn't have any money. I used my own money. I used my own time. So I think it's literally, if you're looking to make a positive impact, just take a moment and just look around. And I promise you, you can point out something that you can get involved with and make a bigger impact.
That's a great insight when it comes to changing or making a positive impact, because we're all in a community. And sometimes what we don't do is take the time to look to see what the needs are and where we can fit in to the community. Because that's a way to advance our community and at the same time give us something productive to do, which can in turn enhance our own life. So I do believe that perspective is something that we need the reminder of as Black men when it comes to creating positive change, because change is not going to just happen. Well, change is happening, but it's not always the change that we want to see if we're not involved in the change or in the process of creating the change. And if we are affected by what's happening in the community, our responsibility then is to see what we can do to help create that change. And so I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's a worthwhile reminder for us all, because no one may come to us and say, man, you know what, this needs to be done, that needs to be done in the community. We ourselves may have to go out there and see what the needs are, maybe even ask the community leaders or schools or organizations within the community to see what we can do to help advance the community, because it's the community that we live in. So we should want the best for our community. So I really appreciate you sharing that reminder and how important it is for us to get involved in the community in whatever capacity to make the difference that is needed, so we can have a more productive environment. So I really appreciate you sharing that, which leads to my next question. How can we, as Black men, help to change the narrative today? And you can speak from whichever perspective, being that you're in the classroom with students, whatever perspective.
Yeah, I think with that, to change the narrative, I think the first part is just being yourself, okay, being our authentic self. But I think even further, and I thought about this, is questioning your makeup. The reason why I say questioning your makeup, because we all were raised in certain cities, certain families, and we were exposed to certain things. And if you grew up in poverty, oftentimes that environment was limited. Your exposure, it was not a global perspective. You didn't see, when I grew up, it was just like, basketball and rap. So we aspired to be a basketball player. I wanted to be a rapper. So I say that to say when you question your makeup, once you realize maybe you were limited and you did not know the world existed, I think it's important for you to explore new interests outside of how you were raised and exposed to. And then I think you can embark upon a new path of getting to know your new self, your new interests, and not being afraid of that being your new self, okay? And this is outside of trying to climb out of the boxes of racism and prejudice and stereotypes, but truly like question, okay, where do I come from? Okay, let me find a new part of me. And then I think you can embark on this new self. And I think that would help us. Going back to your question again, because I don't want to get far away from it.
No, but you are on track, but it's how we can change the narrative today as Black men.
Yes. So once we can do that, then you can change the narrative with this new identity, new person. Because I'm not the person that I believe that you need to fight or go against this, what society thinks a Black man should be, or he's too scary, he's too strong. Like, don't spend the time trying to fight that. I think it's important for you to figure out who you are, your authentic self, explore your new identity. And I think that's fighting the narrative more than anything, that we can be comfortable, because I've been to conferences and about Black men and Black educators, and it's always this ideas that we're constantly trying to navigate through places, navigate this, and try to be conscious of this. And I think it's important to not spend that much energy in finding who you are and being okay with that and not being afraid. And I think showing up like that is fighting the narrative like direct.
Man, that is well said, and I really appreciate that perspective because you're right. A lot of times we grow up in an environment where we are limited. We have to find ourselves outside of the environment that we grew up in, or what we were told about ourselves, which sometimes make us limit ourselves in the sense that we don't think we can achieve on a certain level.
So,
And being that you said that, I remember starting the doctoral journey, right? I
mm,
didn't know there were so many Black males out there with a doctorate degree or doctoral degree and were in so many leadership roles. So we
yes,
limit ourselves because we weren't exposed to it. And
yes,
but the moment you get exposed to it, now you start to challenge yourself based on that norm, based on what
yes,
become your norm. Will
yes,
I limit myself to what I used to, or will I challenge myself for what I now become aware of? And I do agree with you. That challenges the stereotypes more than anything else. I
yes,
don't really think the fight needs to be as it used to be,
yes,
because I think if we show up in our authentic self in regards to the excellence that
yeah,
we hope to achieve, because we become what we aspire to, and we
yes,
change the narrative based on who we become. So
yes,
most
sir.
of the energy should focus on becoming who
Yes,
we
sir.
now become aware of. And that
Yes,
is the excellence that we are a part of, the excellence that we now get exposed to. And the
sir.
excellence, within the Black community is not just today, but for some of us,
Yeah,
we weren't aware of it.
yes. Come on, man. That is, man. And I'm gonna chime in on this because as an educator, that becoming your new self or new kind of past in global consciousness,
Yeah,
I can remember as a teacher, man, I would hold our kids to that greatness. They're like, man, why is Dr. Woodland he's just so extra with us? Why is he?
yeah,
And it was just like I was holding to a line that they're like, man, and I realized one day I was just like, they don't know the greatness that they come from. They have no idea your enthusiasm, your passion for them, and what you're talking about, and what you're holding them to. So I was just like, wow, I realized that if we had a tiered type of progressive mind, that a lot of our kids are stuck in their homes
yeah.
and they have not recognized that the world is theirs. Like it's yours. And you don't have to be stuck in one area to as a sense of authenticity.
Yeah.
And that's not actually the plan for you. It's to grow out and
Mhm.
find a way and a time to reach back.
Man, that is so true. And just listening to you and sharing how the kids would say, with your enthusiasm and your motivation and drive to get them to another level. One thing that I've come to understand, and I've spoken to several Black men, and just seeing Black men in the classrooms, right? Once you overcome those limitations, now
Yes.
it gives you that extra drive to get them to understand, because
Yeah.
you know what it's like to be limited based on your own thinking, based on societal perception, and
Yeah.
based on sometimes our parental perception, because
Yes.
they sometimes are limited based on what they were told. And but when you're in the classroom and then, man, oh, I know it's possible.
Yeah.
Then you can get the students to realize, man, oh yeah, it is possible because look, I was there.
Mm.
I used to think that way. I used to doubt myself. And I
Yeah.
think having us in the classroom, as they are saying now that they want more Black males to be in the classroom, because, of several reasons to change the perspective of Black men, but also they have realized that the students learn at a higher rate,
Yes.
in the
Yes.
classrooms with Black men, not only Black male students, all students.
All students. Yeah.
But I think having that perspective of possibility kind of give you that extra enthusiasm to really empower the students. And I think that's one thing, as you mentioned, the best way to change the narrative is by becoming, and let that light become the way we show up in the world.
That's
Because
right.
I think it burns brighter
Yeah.
than the regular demonstrating, trying to fight for something, and more than becoming the thing.
Yes.
I don't need your permission to be great. I'm going to be great, regardless of your perception of me. And once we show up like that, man, I think we change not only those who want to limit us, but
Yes.
change some of our own people perception for them to believe that more is possible. And that's a
Yes.
topic we could talk on
Yeah.
for
Yeah. We can go with that one.
yeah, that we could go on and on and on. But
Yeah.
I know you are in the classroom and you help the students to develop this hopefulness. But before all that, how you get into that space leads me to this question. What or who has influenced or inspired you to pursue the path that you're on?
Oh man, I got so many. But I will cover it and say it was the village.
Okay.
It was the village. And when I tell you there were so many people that had a hand in my success. I mean, so many hands. The aunties, the grandmothers, the cousins, the uncles, classmates. There was a time in my life where I was literally homeless.
Wow.
And I can remember going when I was in a community college in Kansas City. I can remember going to class and literally I hadn't eaten the whole day.
Wow.
And one of the classmates, she was an older black woman, and she said to me that day, she said, "Come here, are you hungry? All right, come here." She just knew I was hungry and
Wow.
took me to the stand and bought me a hot dog. And I had one classmate, didn't have a place to live. She said, "Hey, you can live with me." People gave me money. People saw me riding the bus. I mean, I can go on and on about the struggle, but there were teachers, strangers. My mom and my father were teen parents.
Oh,
They had me when they were 15 and 16 years old.
wow.
So we kind of grew up together in a sense. So that information, that inspiration came from so many hands that helped raise me into the man that I am today. And as I got older, in my education career, I was inspired by the past, about where Black American people descend from and the struggle, the rise and freedom. And also to know, I looked in 1800s, I found some ancestry through my grandmother. I saw that there were a group of people in Arkansas. My fourth great grandfather, they had land. They had their own cattle. They had their own school on their land. Man, I was just so proud because it's this idea that guys were slaves and you got lynched, and there was a time of you can say some of the worst times in history that there was a small group of people, the Lawsons in Arkansas, and then on my father's side, although he didn't have a relationship with his father, but his father owned land and had people working for him. He couldn't read or write, but he was able to do some things. And unfortunately, I never got to really meet him, but I have pictures, met some of my ancestors. So it came from so many places, inspiration. So I'm always a very reflective individual. So I'm always looking back. I still do research. So to conclude everything, the village, ancestry, my faith background, born in the church, man, those Black charismatic preachers, man, that brought that word. And a little young guy like me, all broken up, had me crying in tears, inspired me that I was more than just a kid from the hood, So all of those things were like a gumbo, like a mixture of things that just inspired me. So I'm pulling from so many places of inspiration. So
And just listening to you, that journey sounds really inspirational. And not only because the village encouraged you, but you could easily become statistics, as you shared,
yeah,
where your parents, they were both young when you were born and stuff like that. And to
yeah,
see where you are now and with the desire to impact the next generation, that in itself is a testament to your commitment to making a difference. And as just listening to you, where you remember those many people who have played a role in helping you to go through your journey is really inspirational, because it goes back to what you shared about the enthusiasm with the students. You know the struggle.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what it's like to maybe miss out on certain things. And
Yeah.
look, I'm here now. So it's not only the knowledge, because
Yeah.
the knowledge is one thing, because if you have the knowledge, you can share it. But I think what really makes the connection is understand the experience. And
Yes,
I
sir.
think, understanding the experience, really makes it easier to connect with the next generation. And I think, man, you're in the perfect space
Yeah.
to inspire our young people, because they like it. It's important that teachers are able to connect,
Yeah.
with students. That cultural competency, I think, is really important to
Yes.
build the relationship. And I know you mentioned something earlier about emotional intelligence and how
Yeah.
having that connection or understanding with what's going on with the environment is really, really important. So, man,
Yeah.
I really appreciate just the point that you have made with how you have gotten into the space that you are in based on those teachers. But is there anything that is significant about being in the classroom with the students that make you feel really great about being there with the students?
Yeah. I think through my research, through my dissertation, just I completed last year, uh, student affirmation means a lot to Black male educators. And the students affirm me every day just by, I took off last week and they were like, Dr. Woodland, where were you? Just that to let me know. They may not say I missed you, but
Yeah,
it's little comments like that where hey, we realized you were gone.
that's right.
Uh, so it's those things. Kids leave you, little notes. They talk to you a certain way. They respect you a certain way, and it's just they tell you they love you sometimes, and you're like, okay, So it's very challenging sometimes because they have their off days. They have their times when they, do disrespect you, do say things that hurt your feelings, but you realize that, hey, I used to be that kid too. So my heart is a little bulletproof in the sense that it's like, I know that's not personal. I know you really don't mean that because I didn't mean it. And I said some mean things to teachers so yes, and I am affirmed every day of my presence. I brought a chessboard to this particular school. Kids had no idea about the game. Now I have about 10 plus kids that know the game, and we're trying to set up a tournament before the year is over. So that's a mark or a seed that's planted where, 30, 40 years from now, if I live to see that long, hey, I helped some kids, learn that game and was able to apply, principle to a kid that can't sit down, but now all of a sudden they come in my class, they can sit down for a minute. And I
Yeah,
can use, hey, play your game. I can use that language, play the game, play your game. You're the king. You got to protect, things of that sort. So those are the type of things. And lastly, the academic piece, to see kids grow. Literally kids to say, hey, Dr. Will, I didn't know how to write an essay. But this year I learned. So all of those things are affirming, man, that makes you feel good, that keeps you going.
man, it's great to be affirmed in what you
Yes.
choose to do. It shows that, because it's one thing to be passionate about it,
Yes.
but the next thing, because even the most passionate needs encouragement, and
Yeah.
just realizing that they enjoy having you there gives you the extra energy. Yeah, I know it does for me whilst I was there in the educational space. Once you hear from them, man, I need to go harder for these,
Yeah.
students, because you realize they appreciate it. So, man, it's really great. Passion, your commitment for it. You still need that affirmation from those who you're serving to let you know that the work, they receive it and they appreciate it.
Yes,
I
sir.
think that is important, which leads me to my next question. What is your perspective on the current climate of Black men in society today?
I think I think we are we are still powerful. We are strong. I think we are in tune with our hearts. But I think one of the, I won't call it a pitfall, but I think is a problem is that we lack global and national camaraderie amongst one another. I think we are divided by a lot of things right now. When we look into things like colorism, are you African American, or are you African, or are you Dominican, Jamaican? That is those differences, or you're a part of what organization, or you're not a part of this organization. And I think that it's powerful and it's in tune and great that we are as men. I think the division is something personally that I have a problem with it. And it's hurtful that when we see each other, there's a lot of times there's not a natural connection. There's almost a guard up.
Yeah.
Because like I said, back in Kansas City, when we talk about the murder rate, I mean, I think 68, almost 70% of the murders was against another Black person that committed it.
Correct.
And there were males. Males were getting murdered in Kansas City more than anything. And if you look at the data, you look at nationally, black males are, out of all minority groups, are more than likely to die by homicide more than any other racial minority groups. So that it's hurtful, because even as you get older, and these, we're talking about young men, but I think that right there is a problem. Again, we're great, we're doing beautiful things, but that right there is just like that lack of seeing each other and saying, my brother, how you doing? Being able to get past some of our own stereotypes amongst one another.
Yeah.
So I think we are holding the line. I think brotherhood and the connection to one another, I would love to see that strengthened. And I understand we don't agree with each other. We don't have to. There's a lot of religious differences. That's fine. But if we can just find that common ground, Black man, because we need each other. And I think that I would love to see that strengthened on a global level. And people of African descent all just connect, man. That's what I would love to see.
Man, that is real, and the connection is needed.
Yes.
But just listening to you talking about the differences when it comes to us, and the differences cause us to not connect with each other as we should.
Yes.
And just listening, I was like, man, we have all these fraternities within the Black community. I was there just thinking, the other race, do they have all these different fraternities? I don't know. So we are divided on so many levels.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, from the Caribbean, American, African, we are all divided, and then we look at each other differently, when we should understand that it doesn't matter where you are, because if I go somewhere, I may get the same treatment as you are, even though I didn't start my journey here. So we have to understand that, and how important it is for us to, learn to work together with each other. We have, and I just, it's so funny. I shared that earlier today about developing the trust.
Yes.
One, we need to trust ourselves, and then we learn to dismantle the distrust we have amongst each other. Because that, I believe, have been socially engineered, where we have this distrust amongst each other. And not until we can trust each other, the unity, the strength that we need to move forward, it's not going to be there if we're not able to trust each other. And because where there's no trust, anything can come in to divide what you're building. And I think that's how we have lost so many of the things that we have worked hard to accomplish, because one of us may not like what the other one is doing, and then we allow what's not beneficial to enter into that space. And then that space then become crumbled then we lost all the effort. So I really support you wholeheartedly
Yeah.
on that point that you have made on us learning to work
Yeah.
together, learning to trust each other. Because where there's no trust, there can't be any unity. And where there's no unity, we ain't going to have the strength we need to progress
We
as
won't.
we should.
No, and I think that, when you look, and it's just my observation, in my opinion on it, but I look at our women, Black women, uh, they seem to do a good job. They know how to get together, man,
They
and
do.
be together. They go out on trips. They talk to each other. They build businesses with one another. They
That's it.
support one another. They get in positions and pull each other up. And it's just like, brothers, man, it's because I've had situations where I knew people, Black men that were in, like I knew personally, that were in positions, and it was just like, well, you're not a part of the fraternity, or you're not a part of our group. So we're not going to look out for you, but we may look out for this guy because he's with us. And it's just like, here we go. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, as another Black man, can we just take the consciousness of us globally and say, hey, at least I'm going to entertain this brother. Let me talk to him. Let me, and I understand that sometimes some people may have some issues going on with themselves, and they could not be a good fit to pull up. However, I think there's a time where we can talk to each other and help build each other. But the women seem to. I know they're not perfect, but I feel like they're doing it more than we are.
It has become really obvious that they are working together. And growing up, to be honest with you, I used to hear that women can't get along with each other. That's what I heard. But no, man, they are doing it, and they are making it obvious. And that's what we have to do as Black men. We have to make it obvious. If the world is going to take us serious, man, we have to let that we work together, something visible, that you're not going to just treat another Black male a certain way, because the brotherhood is there, the support is there, the Black community is there. And that we have to get to that point. So our strength can be obvious, that we are together. So man, I support you on that, a whole 110%.
Yes, sir. Yes.
It's important, man. If we're going to progress as we should, we have to learn to work together and lift as we climb. I hear that saying all the time, but sometimes I do wonder if we only saying it and not doing it, because that's important. If we are saying we should lift as we climb, then we have to make that visible.
Yes.
The world should know that Black men are lifting up Black men.
Yes. And not being a trend.
Yeah.
It's not because it's in the media, but that is a way of life, that things don't have to happen to us in the media, as far as a racial injustice situation. And then society, promotes what they want to promote. And then we're like, hey, let's unify. It's like, no, on the ground. And I follow organizations that are actually doing the work, and I'm always inspired by those. There's some organizations going on. I can't remember the names of the organization in Detroit, where they are literally manning the neighborhoods, protecting the neighborhoods, giving back, and they're collaborating with people that are in the Bay Area, and they're about the community and our people, and making sure that the kids are safe, So it's happening, but I think in the professional field, we need to see it more with doctorate levels. We need to see it on that level, because we all can look at a story of an athlete, an entertainer. You can watch their ascension and them get back. But oftentimes, Dr. So-and-so, we don't see their ascension and get back and connecting with those of themselves. and have a concerted effort to go back and help the place where they came from. So yeah, yeah,
It is so funny you said that. The other day I shared that point with someone where that it seems like the more educated we are,
mm,
less
mm,
disconnected, or the more we have this distrust
yeah,
amongst each other.
mm-hmm,
Because yeah, you see the athletes, you see the entertainers, they always have a group and they will pull a group. But it seems as
yeah,
if once we get educated, we forget. And I think sometimes, as I had a conversation earlier today, I think we have to get rid of the scarcity mindset, because I
yes,
think that may be a problem, that I'm not going to give you an opportunity because I don't think enough is out there. But enough is out there. So we have to
yeah,
develop that capacity and that
yes,
mindset of abundance, so
yeah,
we can help each other, knowing that, man, look, you're not going to take from me
yes,
what
sir.
I'm supposed to get. And helping you can even make it easier for
Yeah,
me to get to where
yes, sir.
I want to be. And that's something that we have to become comfortable with. And that
Yes,
requires a shift in mindset. Goes back to what you had shared earlier.
yes,
When we grow up in an environment, we grow up and see scarcity. So we have to
mm,
change that if we're
yes,
going to help each other to progress and to
yeah,
break some of those cycles.
yes. Some of us need to really overcome the pains of generational poverty, and we think that we left and we've gotten our degrees and we're doing this, and then not realizing that some of that mindset we haven't globally, realized that the world is ours,
It
because we're
is.
trying to hold tight and I don't want to share. And it's just like, hey guys, it's a lot out here for us to make the impact that we want, that we're talking about on the show.
Yeah, man, it is, man. Getting rid of that generational poverty mindset is a
Yes,
thing.
yes,
We have to get rid of that if we're going to progress. Because, man, having a degree, and it doesn't matter what level of degree, you could have 6 doctorate. If you
yes,
haven't unearthed that poverty mindset, the degree doesn't really change it. You have a lot of knowledge, general knowledge, that to help you get a job, but
mhm,
it doesn't change it. And that's why sometimes you see a lot of people who didn't really have the degree, like from a financial standpoint. And you'd be
mhm,
wondering, man, I used to wonder, how
mhm,
they become, and the person who is educated is not, because the
mhm,
education don't really change the perception that we
yes,
have been engineered to think
yeah,
about ourselves. We
yes, sir,
have this poor perspective, that our scarcity, I should say,
yeah,
perspective, which can affect us, especially as Black men, which we have to change, so we
yes, sir,
can achieve all that's possible, so we can let the next generation have a better future
yes,
as we go
yes, sir,
forward. So,
yes, sir.
and that leads me to my next question. We may have touched on this, which I'm about to ask through what we're just saying, but I still want to ask this question. What change do you want to see in general and amongst Black men?
Yes, yes. And like you said, we touched on it a little bit, but I just would like to see more brotherhood that's based on the fact that we just need the fellowship. Like
Yeah,
on a personal level, we need the fellowship. We need to be with one another and you know get together. I think I would like to see that, and I also would like to see more hands reaching back to our young men,
correct.
for our young men. Again, I'm going to go back to the women thing. As being a teacher and being in education, you see there are so many initiatives for the young girls. You
Correct.
have girls in the run, girls in robotics, girls in this and girls in that. I'm not saying that there's not initiatives for young men, but I don't think there's enough. I don't think there's enough. So even with the brotherhood that I would like to see change with Black men, I would like to see all of us reach our hands back. I don't care if you, all of us need to be mentoring at least one young boy.
Yeah.
We all need to have one that we're talking to, saying, checking on, just getting one. So again, two things: the brotherhood, which we expounded on, but I would like to see us reach our hands back to our young men, because in education, that is lacking. Like over, I think 80%, 70, 80%, the teachers in education are white females,
Yeah.
middle-aged white females. It has its pros and cons. It has its, and outside of being white female, just females in general, or women in general. Like that male presence with our young people in the household. I mean, we can go on and on about the data and what the data suggests when a man is not present, the impact it has on the boys and the girls, and all of it when they're present, the data turns to positive. So with their brotherhood, I would like to see us get our hands more engaged with our young boys, our young girls in our communities.
And I think that that is very important. It's very important for us as well, for our well-being, and for us to become even more of who we are capable. As they said, iron sharpens iron. So the more we are around other conscious brothers who want the best for themselves and who want the best for their communities, the more we as a collective will become better as individuals, and also better for our community, because things are not going to change if we don't change it. So that's one thing, man, that we have to work on diligently and intentionally. And that was one of the main reasons for the Black Male Impact. I myself didn't had a lot of connections, right? And I went on a workshop and the person was saying, man, look, you connect with people on your social media, and sometimes you are relying on the few people that you know. Why don't you develop the relationship with the people that you know and see how we can advance what they're doing to make a difference? And that was what really birthed the Black Male Impact, because I'm connected, but we are not talking about what we can do to advance each other to make a greater impact. So it's really important that we come together. And I've had several panel discussions with Black males all across the country for that same reason. And that was the sentiment that most Black men shared, that brotherhood, coming together and stuff like that. But even, I know you mentioned something about the pandemic. The pandemic really showed how important it is for us to come together as Black men. So that's really important. And that's a great reminder for all of us, and the importance of coming together, which leads me to my next question. What was a pivotal moment in your life?
Pivotal moment in my life. I would say my faith transformation. Growing up, my mother always took me to church, and as a kid, I just went. But there was a time as a young boy, young man coming up, I began to give faith a chance, the church a chance. I started reading the Bible and started to understand. I got baptized, received the Holy Spirit, man, and it was that transformation internally was that turning point where all of my life I kind of thought of myself as less than, the black sheep, having issues with my family members, not liking me, feeling like nobody cared about me, and that transformation, spiritual transformation, I think of a scripture, it was Revelations chapter 1, verse 6, it says, have made us kings and priests, and I'm a royal priesthood. And, I began to believe these things, and it straightened my posture. And I began to approach things like, hey, I'm more than a conqueror. I can do all things, So that was a pivotal moment. But also on top of that, that's the spiritual aspect. But then the natural aspect is when I began to research my ancestry in Black history, and I started to get a sense of pride culturally. Is that, hey, I'm not just this kid, this ghetto kid. Like, I come from greatness. So for me, it was like a double impact. It was like a spiritual identity, and then it was a natural identity, and it was just like, hey, on both ends, I'm great. And that's when that change starts to happen. And then I began to approach things even through struggle. I knew that like I was great in my spirit and my flesh, just according to the cultural identity. So that alone was the turning point where it's changed everything that I approached. I stopped believing that I couldn't, that I can, because look what all my ancestors did.
Yeah.
You know, look what the Bible was telling me. Look what God is saying I am. I can do this. You know, so that was that change that turned me where everything in my identity, my perspective changed. So that was the turning point for my life.
Man, and that's powerful to be finding that message or that inspiration in the word and start to live it because of your own conviction. Because sometimes we need that conviction for ourselves. That's why, once we read it, then we are reminded that, man, you can do this thing. And I like how you shared it in a sense from a spiritual and a cultural perspective. Because sometimes as Black people, we grew up in the church for one, and we believe what God said about us. But sometimes we don't have that real conviction because we may not have seen it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because no one around us really exemplify excellence.
Yeah.
But we know that God made us to be great, and they may believe that. But once you have that cultural piece which you shared, which I really like that perspective, because once we can make the connection, no, I know that God made me to be great, but my Black brother and sisters in the past have done all those great things. Man, so that's what I read in the book, in the Bible, as a reminder, that is true. Oh, I can do it. And I really, that's a really profound perspective, because, we do grow up in the church, in the Black community. And we do read the word and we do hear it. And we do hear that we are created in God's image, but sometimes we need that cultural confirmation to strengthen that identity, to know that we came from excellence. Excellence is in our DNA. We can be successful there because there are so many before who have. So I really, really appreciate that perspective, because we hear it all the time. But that cultural identity piece, I think sometimes is missing for some of us, because we haven't been exposed to what a lot of Black people have done, the great things that they have contributed to the world. So, man, I really appreciate you sharing that.
And it goes further, because I think for me it was a crossroads where you get this idea that, oh, that's the white man, they give you the image of Christ as this Caesar Borgia, type of image. And then, when I look at the cultural aspect, I see that the greatest revolutions was inspired. I think of Garvey and his inspiration. He believed in the Bible, you know what I mean? And look what he did. And I think of Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey's, and I think of even going back to the continent of Africa. And you find out, it started in Alexandria, and you look at some of the Christian fathers, that most of them were, people like Tertullian, that he was an African from North Carthage, that before, and this is before the transatlantic slave trade, you look at the geographic locations, and you realize that, man, yes, there was a slave or a Western slave perspective. And even that teaching, we were able to be liberated through the text, through the Bible. Like, okay, we see how you read it, but our liberation, a lot of it started from reading the text. And, when I started finding out that there was a such thing as a slave Bible in which they would take out Exodus, So I was just like, wow, okay, this is more than just what I was taught. Like, this text is very powerful, and it's not the text that enslaves, it's who's reading it in your perspective.
Yep.
So you may have read it in oppression, This man read it, and this woman read it in Liberation.
Yep.
And I was able to find authors like James Cone, and I read the pet. What is that book? I can't remember the book. It was something of the oppressed, and it was just a powerful perspective.
I think I know you what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't want to say
The pedagogy of the oppressed.
pedagogy of the oppressed.
Yeah.
Powerful. I mean, I haven't even finished it, and I'm reading it so slow. So that right there, as a young man growing and feeling like my faith is attacked, maybe I shouldn't have, and having that breakthrough and learning how to research and being affirmed again and saying, hey, you're on the right path. And these people were too. So keep going in your faith. So that right there was pivotal for me in where I stand now, in the same place. So that was just, it was everything that I needed to continue to go forward. Cause I was literally at a crossroads, like, man, I don't know is this right? So that was important. So that transformation and finding that peace in the text and where I'm going and to lead my family in it was everything that I needed. So yeah, man. So
Yeah, and sometimes what I've heard, being on the right path, we're going to be tested. You know, the
yes,
tests sometimes help to not only to strengthen us, but to deepen our conviction in what we are
yes,
pursuing.
yes, sir.
So once we have that perspective that, the test is not really to deter us, but to strengthen our conviction, then
Yes,
we only become
come on.
stronger. And not only for our sake,
Yes, sir.
but for the people that we're doing this thing for, those who are coming
Yes, sir.
behind us.
Yes,
So,
sir.
man, but it's great. I really, again, go back to that pivotal moment and that
Yeah,
spiritual conviction and that cultural conviction. I really think that is
yes,
important, and we all need it as Black people as we go forward on the journey, especially when we are committed to serve
yes,
others. We
yes,
need
sir.
both perspective to be solidified
Yes,
on
sir.
the journey as we go forward. And this, well, my next question, almost to the end of
Yeah.
this conversation, but what life lesson have you learned late in life that you believe is important and can benefit
Mhm.
this current generation?
Yeah, I think what I learned, I read a book, it was by James Covey, and I can't remember the title, but I remember this concept. And he called it the law of the farm. And the law of the farm concept was allow the harvest to happen naturally. And I'll give you an example. It's like a 10 step. And this is my own rendition of it. It's like a 10 step where you're at level 1, and for some reason you want to skip to 10. So you skip all of these steps, but you need those steps to be able to handle 10. And a part of my life, I just wanted to jump to 10. I didn't want to follow the law of the harvest. Is that there is a process when a seed is planted, it has a natural process of growing, and it does not skip steps. And that is something I would tell any young person is allow the natural process to happen. Do not try to speed through it. As painful as it is, as the ups and downs that we have, allow the process to happen naturally. And that those developmental stages, everything that God made, it has a natural process. We look at trees that produce oxygen. When you look outside of your window and you see those trees, and you see how round and how strong and how deep rooted they are. That did not just happen overnight. There was a natural process to reach that strength and to be strong and being hard to be cut down. And I will tell any young person, allow yourself to be that tree and grow over time naturally. Do not try to speed up the process. Don't do it. Allow it to happen naturally. And my second thing is that be reflective. Be reflective. Think about your day. Enjoy every second, but just think about it. That's one of my superpowers is that I'm reflective. I will think back on something and I call it rewinding the tape. I'll rewind it and stop it. Okay, okay, I could have did that better. Be reflective of yourself and what you're doing. Okay, so two things: the law of the farm, allow the process to happen naturally, and reflect as much as possible. And I think that will get you very far and very wherever you want to be. Do those two things, and that will be very good for your life.
Man, there's not much I can say on those two reminders, but I think they are important. Reflecting is really important because you want to know what you have done and what you could have done better as you go forward, because you don't want to be making the same mistakes over and over and over. And through reflection,
Yes,
we can prevent ourselves from making those mistakes. And it also can give us the motivation we need to keep going.
yes,
Because,
yes,
we may have accomplished something before, and because we have, now we can believe that we can as we go forward. But that
yeah,
point that you've made about the harvest, I think that is critically important, because as people, sometimes we do really want to skip the steps. We want to get what we want when we want it, not
yes,
realizing there's a process for what we want. So I really appreciate you sharing those 2 points, because I think
yes, sir.
they are really important. But before I get to my final question,
Yes,
where
sir.
can the listeners find you and help support the work that
Yes.
you are doing to make a difference?
Yeah, you can find me. I have a page on Facebook. It's titled the Woodland Education Center. It's a small nonprofit where I do my chess program.
Okay.
The first phase is chess, but ultimately we would like to have our own community center where we offer the chess program. We offer workshops for young people, and also a space for homeschool students, which is very big in Houston. So if you go to Facebook and search the Woodland Education Center, you can follow me there, and then you can see what we're doing and seeing if you can, support. Definitely need donations. I would love to one day get out of the classroom and really focus on that non-charitable organization. So you can find me there on Facebook. My website is gastonwoodlandjr.com, and you can see some of my books. I write children's books, coloring books, some of my consulting services as well. So you can see some of the things that I offer as well. So those are like the two main uh, places as far as supporting the initiatives and things that I'm actually doing in this field of education and with young people. So
Okay. I will definitely put ways to connect with you in the description, so they can go back to this conversation at any time and go into the description and find ways to connect with you, because I believe that you're doing an important work. And when you're doing an important work, you need support. And because to make the impact we want in the world, we're going to need support from others, to make sure we can make the impact that we so envision to make. So I'll definitely have that in the description, so others who want to support your work can reach out to you and give you the support you need so you can be as successful as you want to, but well, especially for the students that you serve. So my final
yes.
question is, what impact do you want to have on the world?
Oh man, that's a big question. I think ultimately my impact, I just want to make the impact to help unbelievers to believe by my life.
Okay.
Those that don't believe that there's a God, that the Lord exists. I want that's my impact. I want unbelievers to believe that the Lord will use my life to shine their light, to know that He's real. Because where I was as a young man and the things that I've been through, coming up in the type of family that I've grown up in, uh, man, that's a whole nother story in itself.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my impact. I just really want my life to exemplify what faith is and what can happen when you truly submit to God and truly allow Him to transform you, lead your life, and just be used for His glory. So that's my impact. That's the impact I want to make.
Man, and being the example is the best way to make the impact, because we can say things, but we have to understand that people are always watching, and to show up as the message that we share with those around us will help solidify what we're trying for them to get out of the work that we're doing. So, man, I think that is important, to be that example. As you said, doing it through your faith. It's not just telling them the work, but or what God have done for you, but you're being the example. You're being that which is possible for them to see, and you live it wholeheartedly. I think that is important because, man, our greatest impact is going to be being that example of what we're telling the world. So I think that is important. But Dr. Woodland, man, this
Yes,
has
sir.
been a great conversation. And I know the listeners will get so much out of
Yeah.
this conversation. I've taken a lot of mental notes from this conversation, which myself, I may go back and listen to it again,
Yeah.
because you have shared a lot that I believe is applicable to our lives. And we all need a reminder at times as we continue on this journey. So again, Dr. Woodland, thanks for being here on the Black Male Impact.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
And it's a pleasure. And listeners, as always, please continue to support us as we do our best to bring guests that we believe will be beneficial to you and to everyone that you know. Please like, please share, and please support us in any way possible. We really appreciate it. And remember, the Black Male Impact is where positive changes are inspired. So we bring guests that we believe will inspire you, and continue to give us your support as we continue on this journey to make a positive impact. Thank you. See you next time.